Hi everyone. Good morning, Jithan Bhai. You're on mute.
Hi Ashish, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm able to hear you. You're able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
So let me share my screen and we can quickly start this session. So guys, like if anybody want to, they can introduce in the chat box or like they can also speak up. No. So let me check. Anybody wants to speak, they can. I hope everybody can see my screen.
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So let me quickly start with the session. So generally today's session is completely on the architecture and the platform based basically. So it will be completely a theoretical session where we will discuss about some of the use cases I came across in my past while setting up the MuleSoft platform, while designing the MuleSoft platform basically, and like how we can enable a disaster recovery, what are the different deployment and the operational capabilities provided by the MuleSoft basically. Let me first record the session. I don't think I have recorded. Yeah, I start recording. Yeah. Okay. So so it will be mostly focus on the architecture and the platform foundation. So basically, like it's very important. Like we should know like use cases like which what kind of platform we can set up for the for deploying the MuleSoft application. Let's consider if you have to go with customer hosted, if you have to go with cloud hub, if you have to go with a custom cloud hub, or like if we want to go with runtime fabric manager, what are the different options for disaster recovery, so those kind of things we can discuss in this particular session. Okay, so let me go to a next slide. So basically like I'm working as a senior solution architect for the Capgemini, and I'm the MuleSoft ambassador and Surat MuleSoft Meetup leader, and overall 13 years of experience in the integration and the APIs technology. I am MCPI and MCPA basically. Yeah, Nitish is not available. He's not well. So yeah, he is not available in today's meetup. Again, I am only speaker for today's meetup. So there will be the three winner. Like no, we have a small quiz at the end. So we will select a three winner, and they will get a voucher for the so they can enroll for any course basically. So we will talk about this is the agenda, like what is the MuleSoft and what is history like about the MuleSoft. What is operational capability? We will discuss about some use cases. Then we will discuss about a disaster recovery options, and then we will have a finally quiz, right? So it will take around 1 hour or 1 hour 30 minutes to complete this session. So let me talk about why we always talk about the MuleSoft basically, right? Why we say MuleSoft is the best, one of the top integration platform and the API management platform. If you see the Gartner themselves recognize MuleSoft as a leader for the sixth time in 2020 Magic Quadrant for the enterprise integration platform as a service. So MuleSoft was consecutive sixth time a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant basically in the iPaaS, as well as MuleSoft is a five-time consecutive leader in the full cycle of the API management. So basically, like API management has been named as a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for consecutive 5 years, basically, right? So that is why we always say MuleSoft is one of the best integration platform which provide a lot of capabilities, and you will come to know in this particular session. Okay, so like why I am saying MuleSoft is one of the top or the leader in the iPaaS and the API management basically. So let me talk about the MuleSoft history. As everybody aware, like MuleSoft is the software company which having the headquarter in the San Francisco, California, and that provide the integration software to connect application, data, and the services basically. So basically, in 2006, it was founded. It was named as a MuleSource. It is not MuleSoft. In 2000, it is a MuleSource, and it was founded by Ross Mason and Dave Rosenberg. In later 2009, it has been renamed to Mule, and MuleSoft originally it is used as a messaging and the middleware capabilities. Later, it has been expanded to iPaaS integration platform as a service through product Anypoint platform. So in 2009, they started coming with product called Anypoint platform, where they have enhanced like MuleSoft platform from messaging to integration service to iPaaS basically. In 2013, they have acquired Programmable Wave. In 2016, they has been ranked 20th on the Forbes Cloud 100 list basically. Then in 2016, they have filled IPO and started trading in New York Stock Exchange. And finally, in 2018, it has been acquired by uh, Salesforce. And in 2020, like Salesforce declared like MuleSoft is not a service cloud basically. Okay. Let me go to next slide where we will talk about what are the different capabilities of the MuleSoft. So just give me a second. Okay. So MuleSoft, like if you see, there are various components available in your Anypoint platform. Design Center, Anypoint Exchange, Runtime Manager, API Manager, Access Management. So Design Center is nothing but like Design Center is a place or it's an ID where you can go and write your YAML, where you can write your APIs, right? So also you can write a MuleSoft application also. Okay. So that is the where so basically it is one of the main intention of Design Center. You can go and write your YAML, okay, and you can write your API specification basically. And what is Anypoint Exchange? So Anypoint Exchange is basically a repository, or it's a hub basically where you can store all your organization assets, or also like you can find a lot of MuleSoft asset like connectors, templates, like many YAML definitions. Those kind of things can be found in the Anypoint Exchange basically. And also you can store your own organization assets in the Anypoint Exchange. So Runtime Manager, it's very important. It's a place where you manage the life cycle of your deployment, API deployments basically. So basically this is a place where you can deploy a MuleSoft application. And also it provide a capability, like it provide the options to create Anypoint VPC, VPN, dedicated load balancer. You can create your out-of-box MuleSoft alerts. Okay. The other component comes API Manager basically. So API Manager is the component of the Anypoint platform for managing the life cycle of API. So basically, it's a place where you can publish your API, you can manage the life cycle of your API, you can apply the policy, you can apply the security policy, you can apply the logging policy, you can write a custom policy, you can deploy it in the API Manager. Also, you can enable the API analytics for your APIs, or you can set up the alerts for your APIs, like what is the request time, what is the response time, if there's any policy violation happens. So those kind of things can be taken care at the API Manager. The access management, it's nothing, it's a governance of your platform. Basically, you can create the user, you can provide the access, you can set up the identity provider, you can set up the client provider, you can enable the roles, those kind of things. You can manage your subscription, you can manage your license from the access management. Any question till now? No question, right? Just give me a second.
Hey, Jitendra. Ashish here.
So I will go to a next slide. So there will be more good things coming in upcoming slides, basically. Okay. So let's stay with me. So we will discuss those things.
Hey, Jitendra. Ashish here.
Yeah, Ashish.
Hey, when you share that matrix, right, Gartner matrix,
Yeah.
just the first slide, it's
Mm-hmm.
not there. It's not there in the top, right? Yeah, I'm just curious whether you
Top.
the Gartner matrix. If you go in the
Yeah,
view
it's in
again.
top. It's in leaders basically. Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's in leaders. Okay, it's in
Yeah.
leaders.
Yeah. It's in leaders. So leaders, it doesn't matter who is like, but he MuleSoft is it's in leaders basically. Let me open my
Later
presentation.
list.
Yeah, it's a top. So basically, there in Gartner's there are leaders, there are challengers. So MuleSoft is in the top leaders basically. Just a minute. Yeah, let me open my presentation again. You can see my screen. Hello.
Yes. Go ahead.
It's in leaders like MuleSoft. Here it's MuleSoft. So it's in leaders basically. So we have our challengers, we have a niche players, we have a visionary. So these are all leaders basically. Okay. So then I will talk. So like so basically, when you deploy your MuleSoft application into Runtime Manager, right? So you have option to select how many workers you need to assign to that particular application. What will be the worker size for that particular application? So those kind of things you can assign using your Runtime Manager basically. So workers are nothing. It's a dedicated instance of a Mule runtime engine that you can run your integration application on the cloud of. So basically, when you deploy your application into Runtime Manager, you select one worker or you select two worker. What does this mean? So it means if you select one worker, so basically what it does, it create a EC2 instance, a AWS instance in the backend and deploy the Mule runtime. And in that Mule runtime, it also deploy your application. If you select the two worker, it will create a two EC2 instance. Okay. And like it will deploy the two Mule runtime on the both the instance, and it will deploy your application, and they will be load balancer using shared load balancer basically. Okay. Worker size is nothing, like you define your size of your worker basically. 0.1 it start from 0.1 vcore, 0.2 vcore. Maximum vcore you can assign, it's up to 16 vcores per application. So one of the advantage you are getting from the cloud of like all the application runs in the isolated mode basically. So one application doesn't depend on the other application. If you are deploying, if you are using the customer hosted Mule runtime, right? In that case, you will have a single Mule runtime. You are deploying all the application into that single Mule runtime. But in case of Cloud Hub, in case of any point platform, in case of iPaaS, right? You are deploying your application isolated, like separately. So like one application doesn't depend on the other application. Like if your one application crash, it doesn't mean your other application will also get crashed. If your one if the Mule runtime of one worker got crashed, right? It doesn't mean the Mule runtime for other worker will also get crashed. Doesn't mean that, right? So everything is isolated. Okay. So these are some worker size. Worker size is nothing. It's a compute memory or still storage capacity of your EC2 instance. So we have 0.1 vcore, we have a 0.2 vcore. 0.1 vcore, we get around 500 size of memory and 8 GB of storage basically. So up to you can go up to 16 vcores. Now, apart from that, MuleSoft provides some of the other capabilities, some of the other features like zero downtime update, horizontal and vertical scaling, auto scaling, and intelligent healing basically. So let me talk first about intelligent healing.
Yeah. Jitendra, if you are sharing your screen, then the other one, like the components and capabilities one, not the.
Yeah, it's component and capabilities only, right? I am on the component and capabilities screen only.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Yeah. So basically, what does zero downtime update means? Anybody is aware? Like what does this mean basically?
So Jiten, let me answer this. At one point is like if you are deploying any API, then it doesn't mean that the existing will be stopped and then until it is deployed, nothing will happen on the server. So that means it will be zero downtime. The existing one will take care of all the transactions while the other one is deploying, and once the new one is deployed, then it will seamlessly take over the new one.
Correct. That is the correct answer. So generally what happens when you try to modify or redeploy or you trying to update the application, it doesn't mean like it will stop the previous version of your application. What it does, it create a new EC2 instance. Okay. It deploy your application in that new EC2 instance. Then once the application is deployed and all the transaction or all the request on the previous earlier version has been completed. So what it will do, it will pointed that domain to the new application or new EC2 instance, the same domain to new EC2 instance, and that particular instance, the old instance will be removed. Okay, and that is how it does a zero downtime update. So CloudHub supports updating your application at a runtime. So end user of your HTTP APIs, Express API, HTTP API is zero downtime. Express is zero downtime basically. While your application update is deploying, CloudHub keeps the older version of your application running, and your domain point to older version of your application until the new uploaded version is fully started. Okay. So basically it's good. Like, so generally, let's consider your application is running on the runtime manager. And if you're trying to redeploy that particular application or trying to modify settings or update anything, so in that case, what will happen? It will create a separate EC2 instance. It will deploy a Mule runtime. It will deploy the new version of jar into that Mule runtime. Once the deployment is completed, once the application is started, so MuleSoft will point the domain on the older EC2 instance to new EC2 instance, and it will remove the older EC2 instance. So that is how it performs a zero downtime updates. Horizontal and vertical scaling. What does this horizontal and vertical scaling means? So basically, horizontal scaling means where you can increase the number of instances, where you can increase the number of nodes in your cluster or in your group basically. Whereas vertical scaling means you are increasing your storage, you are increasing your RAM, you are increasing your like storage capacity, like compute power basically. So that is the vertical scaling. So in CloudHub, you can do the horizontal scaling without any downtime. So basically what you have to do, let's consider if your application is running on one worker, you have to go and just select the two workers. That's it. So it will automatically it will deploy the application without any downtime. Same thing goes with a vertical scaling, where you have to just increase your compute power basically. You have to select, let's consider if you have select 0.1 vCore and you want to scale it vertically, just go and increase your vCores basically 0.2, 0.4, those kind of things. Auto scaling. Anybody heard about this particular terms? Like, have anybody used this particular thing, auto scaling in MuleSoft?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so can you give me some idea on that, like, if
Yeah.
possible, like,
Yeah, so basically we are maintaining our APIs, right? That time we will see that how my API is performing. Okay, if it's getting loaded, that time I can go. I mean, I don't need to write anything, right? Autoscale, we can write rules saying that, okay, if my API is overloaded for this much time, continuously go and increase the, processing power, basically, processing power of my deployment. That's what we do in Autoscale.
Okay, so MuleSoft has auto scaling doesn't come with all the license subscription. I think it's Titanium. It comes with Titanium or Platinum. It's come with Titanium, I think. Okay, so it doesn't come with each and every license subscription. You have to buy additional things for that. So basically, like if you see in AWS, we have some concept called dynamic scaling or fleet management kind of thing, right? So MuleSoft also provide a concept called auto scaling. So basically, what happens, like, you can set up a policy for your application. If my application CPU usage is greater than 80% for 10, for 10 minutes, you can increase the vCores, or you can do the vertical scaling, or you can do the horizontal scaling. So those kind of policy you can define. You can also say if my memory usage is greater than 80%, right, for next 10 minutes, for continuous 10 minutes, increase the number of vCores. So such kind of rules you can set up. Also, you can set up if as soon as my CPU usage goes down less than 80% and my memory usage goes down less than 80%. In that case, you can, you can do scale down, and you can definitely, you can just do the scale down. You can reduce the number of vCores and you can reduce the number of workers. So those kind of things taken place once you have set up the policies for application, those kind of things will taken care automatically. You don't have to do any manual intervention. Once you define the policy, there are MuleSoft jobs which will keep on monitoring all these things. If something has matched the policy rules, it will take the action, like depending like what action you have defined, whether you want to increase the number of workers or increase the number of vCores. That's such kind of rules you can define in the auto scaling. Now I will come to intelligent healing. What does this mean? What is the intelligent healing basically? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, healing is basically when your a worker is not responding. So Mule runtime automatically, restart that worker. So that is what I think the intelligent healing means.
Yeah, you are correct. So basically, what happens? So MuleSoft continuously monitoring your application. If something goes wrong to your application, like if your Mule runtime got crashed, your worker is not responding, or something goes wrong, in that case, MuleSoft will automatically redeploy, or automatically restart that application in some availability zone. So basically, what happens in MuleSoft, generally when you deploy your application, you select the region. I want to deploy application in US East 1. So what does it will happen? So each region have a 3 availability zone. So MuleSoft will go and deploy the application into one of the availability zone in that particular region. If that particular availability zone is not responding, it got failed, or like it got crashes, that availability zone got failed, like availability zone is not responding. In that case, MuleSoft will automatically restart that application in other availability zone out of 3, basically out of remaining 2. Okay, so those kind of things automatically taken care by the MuleSoft, basically, right? So that is why it is known as intelligent healing. Now I will talk about MuleSoft region and multi-tenancy. So currently MuleSoft is you can deploy the application in 12 different regions. So basically in US we have a 4 region: North Virginia, US East Ohio, US West North California, and West Oregon, basically. In Europe we have a 3 region: Ireland, London, and the Frankfurt. In Asia Pacific we have a Tokyo, Singapore, and the Sydney. Whereas like we have a 2 other central region like Canada and South America, we have a Sao Paulo, Brazil, basically. Okay. So now I will come to what is a multi-tenancy. Like anybody is aware of this term. What is multi-tenancy? Okay. So generally, this is the term which is coined during the cloud computing. This is a word mostly used during the cloud computing. So basically, in cloud computing, there are multiple tenants or the customer of the clouds, basically, cloud vendor, basically. So for MuleSoft, there can be multiple tenants, right? So like there can be multiple customers for MuleSoft, right? So like let me tell the definition. In the cloud computing, there are multiple tenants or the customer of the cloud vendor share the same computing resources like underlying hardware. So basically what happens, generally you have a bare metal server, right? So you divide that bare metal server, you hypervise that bare metal server into the multiple virtual machines, and those virtual machines can be can be allocated to any vendor, basically any tenant of your cloud vendor, basically, right? So that is known as a multiple tenancy. Okay, even the tenant share the resources, but they are not aware of each other, and data is also isolated and secure from each other. So generally what happens, so generally even they are sharing the bare metal server like in the form of virtual machine, but still the data will be not shared across the both the all the virtual machine or among the multiple tenants. Basically the data will be not shared, that will be isolated. Your data will be used by yourself, it will be not shared with the other tenants, basically. Okay, for example, I will give one example. We have one server with a high configuration may not be efficient for the tenant, for one tenant. Okay, and that tenant may not utilize all the computing resources allocated to the server. So it is always good to share that machine, basically among the multiple tenants, that can maximize the use of resources and reduce the cost for the tenant, as the server is just shared among the multiple tenants. Okay, so MuleSoft Anypoint platform, basically MuleSoft Anypoint platform is a multi-tenant platform, because the same Anypoint platform is shared by the multiple tenants, basically, but it doesn't mean like your data will be shared with the other tenants. Basically your data will be isolated and it can be used by yourself, it will be not shared to any other tenants, basically. Okay, for example, take the two example. The worker cloud is a multi-tenants cloud of the virtual machine. This VM provides the security isolation needed for integration to run the custom code without affecting other. Okay, so as I mentioned, like if you are deploying an application on cloud up, so you select like I want to deploy application on one worker, so that worker is isolated, right? That EC2 instance is isolated, that is separated, like it doesn't like it will not share the data with other tenants basically, right? Everything is isolated here. And the second, if you see your anypoint platform, your shared load balancer, any other load balancer, and like anypoint monitoring services, all are this multi-tenant services, right? Because all the tenants are using the same services. But as I mentioned, the data will be not shared. Your data will be like, you can see only your data. It cannot be seen by other tenants in that particular yeah, hello, any question?
Jitendra, yeah, I have a question,
Yeah.
Jitendra. So, for example, let's say we have a high configuration server, and there are 4 tenants, and so as you said that there will be separate 4 virtual machines created within that server, and the resources will be shared. So my question is, for example, if one tenant requires high processing power, high memory usages, high storage, then can it be pulled from other
I will tell
tenants?
you. Yeah, no. You cannot, as I mentioned, you cannot share the data. Okay, so generally, you see in cloud
No, not
computing,
data. No, not data. The resources I am talking about.
so why you want to bring that resources from other tenant? You cannot do that, right? You can request for more resources, and there are vendors like AWS, and they will definitely provide those kind of resources. If you want 10 GB of RAM, like 8 GB of RAM, right? You just request while creating the server, I want 8 GB of RAM, so we'll get that particular resources, right? Why you want to, like, borrow from other tenant? It is
Yeah.
not possible, right?
So,
Right.
for example, the server has got 100 GB of RAM, and
Yeah.
there are 4 tenants. Each one has got 25 GB, for example.
Yeah.
Now I require maybe say 30 GB of RAM at one point, and the other tenants are not using that particular their
No.
own slot. So can it be borrowed? That's what.
No. It's completely their choice, right? It's a completely tenant choice. Like tenant have thought something like that, So in future, I may require some kind of. See, once the RAM is allocated to one tenant, right? You cannot borrow from him, right? You cannot borrow from him. He has to go and reduce his resources, basically resource power, right? You have to change the configuration, right? But you cannot borrow anybody's RAM, basically, or anybody's storage. Okay,
Okay.
you cannot do that. So if you see, the MuleSoft is available in the 12 different regions, and each have its own subdomain. US East 1.cloud.io for US East. So this, like, for Asia Pacific Singapore, we have a hgs1.cloud.io, right? So those kind of, like, there are each. This is the nothing. This is a shared load balancer URL. So when you deploy the application, what URL you got? appname.region.cloudup.io, right? So it's the same URL. Okay. Any question? Let me check. Ketan, it's depend, like it depend on tenant, what size tenant has selected basically. Okay, so it depend, like if you want to create a EC2, let's consider, take the example of workers basically. So basically one tenant may have deployed the application on 0.1 V code, and you want to deploy on 0.2 V code. It's possible, right? You can do that, right? It doesn't matter, like, tenant, all tenant will allocate it the same. It depend on you, like how much resource you want. Okay, any other question? No question. Okay, let me move. Where is my PPT? Yeah, this is. So now we will come to like some use cases, very important. So you now got some idea, like, what are the different capabilities provided by the MuleSoft, why MuleSoft is known as a multi-tenant platform. So let me come with some operational capability. Let me discuss about the first use case. Okay, so the first use case, a client is looking to implement a MuleSoft. Okay, so basically I got customer, and he asking, like, I want to implement MuleSoft for connecting SaaS application like Salesforce and the NetSuite. Okay, and the client is looking for cloud-based solution where they don't want to manage the infrastructure, and all the application must be high available and the fault tolerance basically. And APIs must be secure with a client ID enforcement policy, and platform must have a feature like intelligent healing and zero downtime update. It's a very simple requirement. So basically, I got a customer, and he want to set up a MuleSoft platform. Basically, he want to select some MuleSoft platform component where it can connect to SaaS-based application. The SaaS-based application is the application which is available over the public internet, basically, right? So there are applications called Salesforce CRM, NetSuite ERP, those kind of application it has to connect. So the client is looking to integrate Salesforce and NetSuite, which is available over the internet. And they are looking for a completely cloud-based solution. Like they don't want to manage the platform, they don't want to manage the infrastructure, and they don't want to manage any platform SLAs. Okay, and also they are looking their application must be highly available and the fault tolerance. And API must be secure with client ID enforcement policy. And platform must have a feature like intelligent healing and the zero downtime update. So what will be the solution? Can anybody answers me? I will open the more,
Cloud Hub.
Can there be multi-region? I will come on this. Like there is a, I will come. We cannot do that, but I will show you like how we can achieve this. So this is Cloud Hub. Like what are the components we will require from the Cloud Hub basically? Okay, I will tell you. So let me go to my architecture. So how the architecture will look like. So this is the how my architecture will look like. So what I will do, I will create a 3 environment: dev, test, and the prod. And like I will have also API manager. So basically the client have a one requirement. I want to enable a client ID enforcement policy. So we will definitely require the API manager. In API manager, I can connect my all the application in Runtime Manager to the API manager, or I can peer Runtime Manager in API Manager using API proxy or API auto discovery. So there are 2 ways. For API proxy, we require extra cores basically because it deploy one more application on the top of the real application, or we can definitely use the API auto discovery and then we can apply the policy. So our one requirement has been fulfilled, and they are also looking to connect a cloud-based application. So by default, so from Runtime Manager, the egress traffic is enabled. The internet is enabled, right? When you deploy the application to the MuleSoft platform or Runtime Manager, by default, the internet is available. So you can directly connect to Salesforce and the NetSuite without creating any other configuration. And I will have a 3 environment: dev, test, and the prod. So by default, we have already discussed it provide intelligent healing, zero downtime updates, and everything. For high available, we will ensure we deploy the application on the multiple workers. By default, MuleSoft is a fault tolerant. So we will discuss this. So what fault tolerance I talk about, like intelligent healing. So those kind of features is already available, right? When you are using the cloud kind of environment, basically. And then it comes to they don't want to manage the infrastructure. So basically, MuleSoft is a iPaaS integration platform as a service where we don't have to manage any infrastructure and we don't have to manage any platform. We have to just worry about the application and data. Apart from that, we don't have to do anything. All the SLAs and everything will be maintained by or managed by the MuleSoft basically. And the question on this architecture before I go to some complex architecture. This is straightforward. Like you are using the vanilla Cloud Hub solution. You are not customizing anything here.
Jitendra, for this healing thing, do we need load balancer environment, or even with one?
No. Yeah, just wait for like few other slides. You will come to know on that also. Okay, just keep that term in the mind. Intelligent healing. I will explain in detail in upcoming slides.
Okay, thank you.
Next solution. It's a bit complex solution where we will involve like VPC, VPN, dedicated load balancer. The second use case, a client is looking to implement MuleSoft for connecting the SaaS application like Salesforce, an SAP system in the private AWS cloud, and database and the resources in the on-premise system. So here we have a complex requirement. I have to also connect a SaaS-based application, Salesforce, and the NetSuite. I also have to connect SAP system in the private AWS, basically in private AWS cloud. And I also want to connect a database and the services which is located in your on-premise or your corporate data center. Okay. Also, they required a cloud-based solution where they don't want to manage the infrastructure. All the application must be highly available and fault tolerance. Application can be accessed by the fewer client publicly. Keep this term in the mind. Only by a fewer client publicly. I don't want all my client access my application deployed to the Cloud Hub. I want only few customer, a few consumer can access my application. API must be secure with OAuth JWT, and platform must have a feature like intelligent healing, zero downtime update. Any question on this particular use case before I go to the solution? Let me check my. Can you once tell how you do? See, I explained like in API Manager, you can go and choose the policy, client ID enforcement policy for that particular application. Like you can like peer your Runtime Manager and API Manager in API Auto Discovery and or API proxy basically, and you can apply the policy. No, I will come on this. I will RTF, SAP. I will come on this. Okay. So I want a cloud-based solution. So like we want downtime updates and all those things. So see, like this is just this is my all the previous experience I'm sharing. The things can change, depending on your requirement. You can choose other platforms also, but this is what I have implemented in the past depending on the requirements. So this is the solution. So generally, what will happen? Like I will have a three, So first thing, I want to enable OAuth JWT policy. I will definitely use the API Manager where I can apply the policy, JWT validation policy, and I can connect Runtime Manager and API Manager using API proxy and the API Auto Discovery. That is the one of the requirement. I will not talk about the intelligent healing, the high availability. So Intel by default, MuleSoft platform or Runtime Manager provide the intelligent healing, so we don't have to worry about that. High availability, you just have to deploy the application on the multiple worker. It will provide the high availability. Now, the first requirement, the application has to connect to the SaaS-based application. So by default, the public internet is available when you deploy the application to the Runtime Manager. So you can simply use that part connection to connect the SaaS-based application. Now the second requirement came like it has to connect to the SAP system which exists in the AWS private cloud basically. So in that case, I have this particular AWS resources. So basically it is, so generally what we will do, the first thing, you have to create anypoint VPC, virtual private cloud. It's nothing, it's an isolated network into the cloud of. So basically you create anypoint VPC, and right in VPC, you will have a two VPC, one is prod VPC, one is non-prod VPC basically. Okay. So you will map all your dev and the test environment with non-prod VPC and prod environment with a prod VPC basically. Okay. And you will create a VPC in any one of the region. I will suggest always create, it depends, like always create a VPC in the region which is near to your data center basically. Okay. So I will come to a dedicated, you got this. Now I create the VPC. So now once I create the VPC, now I want to connect a resources which is available in private AWS. So what I can do, I can raise the request with MuleSoft to enable the VPC peering between AWS resources and your cloud hub basically. So what happens? So when you can do the VPC, when your AWS resources, okay, and the anypoint VPC are in the same region. So basically, this is my AWS VPC and this is my anypoint VPC. They must be in the same region. If they are both are in same region, you can enable the VPC peering between them directly. Now I also want to connect a databases, any on-premise resources. So I can definitely do the VPN Ipsec tunneling between, anypoint VPC and the corporate data center. Okay, so that is how. So what I have done, so for connecting SaaS-based applications, the first thing, I will create a VPC. So generally it is required when you want to connect some resources available in the private cloud or in the data, a public, a corporate data center, you have to create the VPC and deploy the application within the VPC. So I create the VPC, two VPC, prod and non-prod VPC. I map all the non-prod environment to the non-prod VPC and prod environment to the prod VPC. I ensure that my VPC in the same region as the AWS VPC, because I have to do the VPC peering. So I have see my particular AWS cloud is in US East 1. So I also create VPC in US East 1. So generally it is recommended to create near to your data center basically. Okay. So now I have done this. Now for connecting AWS resources, I will enable the VPC peering. So you don't have an option to create a VPC peering in the anypoint platform. You have to raise the ticket with MuleSoft, and MuleSoft will do for you. Then the second option, I have to connect a corporate data center. For that, I will use the VPN Ipsec Tunneling. So yeah, you can see that I will use the VPN Ipsec Tunneling. Now The other requirement is that now once you deploy the application into the VPC, and those application has to access over the public internet. So for that, you will create a dedicated load balancer within the VPC, and dedicated the two dedicated load balancer. One is prod and one is non-prod. But one of the requirement is that only a fewer client can uh, access the application deployed to the cloud. So for that, in dedicated load balancer, we have an option called whitelisted CIDs. So you can just by default, all the public traffic is allowed. So because the whitelisted CID is 0.0.0.0/0. So by default, all the traffic is allowed. So what you can do, you can remove that 0.0.0 and you can allow the CIDR mask from where you have to allow the traffic. Basically, in this way, you can restrict the traffic from the fewer client basically. Okay, any question on this architecture? So you should have one question, like, I think you should have one question, like, I will ask that question if anybody can answer that. So let's consider, so as I mentioned, VPC peering can be done between the like if VPC exists in the same region. Let's consider my anypoint VPC in US East 1 and AWS VPC in US East 2. So we cannot do VPC peering. Then what we will do to connect AWS resources in the private cloud from anypoint VPC? Any question? Any answer for this? I think direct connect is also right answer. Yeah, so basically you can simply use anypoint VPN Ipsec tunneling basically. Okay, so see, local VPC peering is allowed in the cloud hub. Right now there is no option to do the remote VPC peering, right? So this is the local VPC peering. But like, yeah, in AWS we have a remote VPC peering also, where you can do the VPC peering in the different regions, but that option is right now not available. So you can do the VPN Ipsec tunneling, or you can definitely make use of the direct connect basically. So Rahul, like, it's very simple. Like, basically, you can go to, when you create the dedicated load balancer, in dedicated load balancer, we have option for whitelisted CIDs. So by default, all the public traffic is allowed on the dedicated load balancer because we have given the CIDR mask of 0.0.0.0/0. It means all traffic is allowed. You can delete that particular entry from the dedicated load balancer, and you can just put the CIDR range from where you have to allow the traffic. In this way, you are restricting fewer clients basically. If somebody tried to send a request other than from that particular IP range, that particular client will get 50 response or 503 response, or like, or request will silently drop basically. David, like, you can do the client ID enforcement policy from from API manager. So basically, when you deploy the application into the Mule runtime, you can peer your API runtime manager in the API manager using like API auto discovery and API proxy. Once you have done that, okay, so you can definitely enable any kind of policy which you want. Okay.
Jitendra, I think he's enforcing policy to restrict the traffic. I think that's what he's saying.
No. Like, we will not do from the policy basically. So we will restricting directly from dedicated load balancer basically. Okay. So let me show if I can show that particular thing. Let me create one VPN like quickly. I will do that right now. VPC doesn't give any domain basically. Dedicated load balancer gives a domain. Okay, and you can map that particular domain with some public domain also. Okay, so VPC doesn't give any domain. I don't think VPC gives any domain. Let me create a VPC. Basically, I can simply go to VPC. I can show you quickly. You can create a VPC. So basically, you have to give a name of your VPC. I can say Mule Demo VPC. Then you can select the region. You can give the CIDR mask. It's CIDR mask basically. Okay, you can select the environment. By default, I have only one business group. It will take that. You can define your firewall rules and all those things, and you can simply say create VPC. I want to show that option, right? And that's why I'm creating a VPC. So generally it take for 1 minute, less than 1 minute for creating the VPC. Okay, the VPC has been created. Now you can go to load balancer. You can say create load balancer. In create load balancer, you have a whitelisted CIDR. So by default, it's 0.0.0.0. Okay, /0 basically. It means all traffic is allowed. You can just remove this entry and you can put the IP range like, I want to allow the traffic from 172 dot, or I just want to allow the traffic from 192.168.1.0/24, like that, 23, 24, whatever. You can just add this, So those kind of things you can do it basically, and you can add to this list, right? That is how you can just whitelisted, like you can allow only fewer clients and restrict the other clients basically. Okay. Any question? Okay. I will go to next use cases. There are a few more use cases. So where is my PPT? So we have completed how we can use the customized cloud of architecture basically. So this is the customized cloud of architecture. So like we talk about the vanilla cloud of architecture, we have talked about the customized cloud of architecture. Yeah, any question?
I always have this in mind. When we create VPC, right, we mention the environment. So whatever we deploy to that environment, those applications will be there in the VPC.
Yeah,
If you
by
don't,
default.
yeah, if you don't mention the environment, okay. So before creating VPC in the same region, I have deployed some applications. Okay, so if I
Correct.
restart my VPC or servers, those will get automatically added to my VPC, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
if I mention the environment, those other applications which you have deployed before creating VPC, those won't come, right? If I mention the environment.
No, it will not. So because by default,
Mm-hmm.
what MuleSoft does, let's consider you haven't created a VPC and you deploy the application before creating the VPC, right? So by default, the application will get a dynamic IP address basically. Like AWS region have some IP address, like bunch of IP address. So one of the IP address will allocate it to that particular application. Okay. So now you create the VPC and now you're deploying the new application. Those new application will get the IP allocation from the VPC range, barabar, right? Hello.
Yes.
So those VPC will get those application will get the IP from the VPC range, right? Now the previous application still haven't got a new IP, right? So what happens, as I mentioned initially, what MuleSoft does, it create a EC2 instance in the backend, it allocate the IP address to that particular EC2 instance and all those things, right? And that allocation happen from the some predefined IP addresses in the AWS region. Now what you have to do, you have to go and restart that particular application so it can
Yes.
create a new EC2 instance. It can allocate IP address from that particular VPC range, and it can deploy the application into the new EC2 instance. That is how it happens. Right? Is this your question, right?
Yes. But if we add an environment, the production environment, let's say I have two environments in my right. So
Yeah,
that
I got.
yeah, right.
Yeah, I got your question, but this doesn't happen.
Correct.
If you are assigning the environment, right? It doesn't happen. Like so generally let's consider if you are allocated the IP address to your application already, right? It will not change. Like even you are creating the VPC and assign the environment, it will not go and change that IP address. Still you restart the application. That is how it works basically. That is how the architecture is.
Yes, correct. Thanks.
And any other question?
In the requirement, there was one point that the database is in the on-prem infrastructure. So for that also we need to create VPC, or it's a separate?
No, you have one VPC. From one VPC, you can create up to 10 VPN, or you can create a number of VPC peering. That's fine.
Okay.
So now, this is also like I am come to a customer hosted solution where we can use the clustering basically. So basically, there are some financial institution is looking to implement cost-effective solution and can operate on the minimum costs basically. And solution must be high available and having the low workloads basically, due to compliance or the security requirement within the organization. So they have some security and the compliance requirement. They don't want, they cannot move to the cloud-based approach basically, right? So API must be secure with the client ID enforcement policy. Application deployed on the Mule runtime must be highly available basically, and need to support the integration with HTTP listener, JMS topic, UN listener, file listener, SAP listener, and data needs to be shared across the node basically. Like you have an object store, you have a caching, those need to be shared across the multiple nodes. Let me repeat. So we have a financial institution, okay, and they want to implement a cost-effective solution, and they can operate on the minimum costs basically. So basically, they don't have to worry about the core allocations and everything, and the solution must be highly available and for having the low workloads. Basically, workloads is not that high. We are receiving like 10, 20 requests like per minute or 10, 20 requests, 100 requests per hour. Those kind of workloads due to compliance and the security within the organization, they have some compliance and the security requirements. So they cannot go with a cloud-based approach basically, and they want to secure their API with client ID enforcement policy. An application deployed on the Mule runtime must be highly available, and they have need to support integration which having the HTTP listener, JMS, queue, topic, file listener, SAP listener, and data needs to be shared across the node. So this kind of requirement. So basically, what solution we will going to use? Anybody can answer this.
Yeah, hybrid solution with the cluster enabled.
Yeah, this is right. Okay, I have one question. When we are creating, I see there is an option to disable static IPs. Does it mean by default application get the no? It doesn't mean that. Okay, so basically, Suman, this is the good question. So let's consider I have a SFT. See, basically, when you create, when you deploy an application, so there are two IPs. One is the private IP, one is the public IP. The public IP is always used to communicate with your end application, your end services basically. But the private IP is basically a private within your VPC basically, right? So when you deploy the application within the VPC, the private IP will be the from the range of the VPC IP addresses, right? But if you want to communicate with your external application or external database, in that case you communicate with the public IP addresses. Some of the services have a IP whitelisting, right? Some of the service, if cloud of application has to communicate with SFTP location which has a IP whitelisting, in that case what will be your solution? Can anybody answer this? What will be the solution for that?
Repeat the Jitendra. What was the question?
So generally, I have deployed my application the VPC. It got the private IP address from that particular VPC range. Okay. Now I want to communicate with SFTP location where there has been IP whitelisting policy. So basically, our IP must be whitelisted there. In that case, what will be the solution? Sanket, you are right. You need to assign the static IP address. So generally, we never use the private IP address to communicate with your external application. You always use the public IP address. So you have to go and assign the, even you deploy your application within the VPC, but still you need to assign the static IP address to your application to whitelist it in the end systems basically. Okay. You got my answer, Suman, right? I have one. Yeah, Abhishek, we can definitely use the IP blacklist to restrict the API access to specific IPs. But the problem is that the first request will come to dedicated load balancer. The request has been on dedicated load balancer. You are allowing your request to come inside. The request come inside, and then it will check. Then it will go to application, and application will check the IP blacklisting kind of thing, right? You cannot apply the policy on the top of your load balancer. You can apply the policy on the top of your application to restrict the request at the dedicated load balancer itself before it get into your application. That's why we are using the whitelisted CID also, right, Abhishek? Okay, good. Okay, so let me go with up. This is my solution basically. Okay, so basically let me explain. One of the requirement is that, like, I will use the Mule runtime. So basically I will have a like more than one server into my on-premise solution, which will be load balancer with the external. Let me have you got this use case right before I explain the solution? Have you got this use case completely right?
Yes, we know the requirement.
You know the requirement. So before I move to the solution, this is use case 3, I think. So basically, one of the requirement, it's a financial institution. They have like some restriction to go to the cloud. Basically, they cannot do the deployment of the cloud. Basically, right? So basically, what we have suggested, we will go with a customer hosted Mule runtime, where we will have a test dev in the prod environment. In each environment, we can have a 2 servers. Okay. So basically, for HTTP requests, they will be load balanced with the external load balancer basically, and the both server will be clustered basically. We can use the clustering. Somebody asked about the hybrid implementation. This is the hybrid implementation approach basically. Okay, so now, so both server will be clustered, and clustering is using some distributed memory grid basically, for storing the data which can be shared across both the nodes. So what is the clustering? Clustering is nothing. It's a group of servers which act as a single unit basically. So I have created 2 servers. For HTTP workload, we have to use the external load balancer like Route 53 or Nginx or whatever, or Traffic Manager or any Elastic load balancers. Those kind of load balancers we can use, for HTTP load balancer. For for both the node to communicate with each other, so we can use the clustering. So we have used the clustering. So clustering is also used to do the data sharing between both the nodes. We have one requirement where we have to do the data sharing, right? So apart from that, why I have used the clustering? So we have a topic queue, listener, file listener, SAP, listener. So generally, what will happen? Let's consider if I haven't used the clustering, and I put my request to the topic. So in that case, what will happen? The same message will be picked by both the server, basically server 1, the server 2, and it will be processed by both the server. But if I use the clustering, in that case, clustering will ensure that the message from topic is always processed by one server. It doesn't process by both the server. So generally, what is the difference between queue and topic? Can anybody answer this question?
Well, topic can have multiple consumers, whereas for queue there is only one consumer.
Okay, this is the correct answer. So now I have one question. Like if queue have a 3 consumer, like if queue there are 3 consumer listening the same queue, and some publisher drop the message to queue, what will happen to that particular message? How that message will behave?
The active queue will take that message.
My all three queue are active. All 3 consumers are active.
Try to pull the message, and depending upon the queue configuration, sometimes so once the message is pulled, it remains in the queue for a certain period.
No, it's not like that. So queue itself have a property. Even there are 3 consumer listening to same queue, it will deliver message to one of the queue basically. It can deliver one message to one queue. It can deliver second message to other queue, like that. Queue itself have a property. It always deliver message to one of the 3. Okay, so it doesn't know to which consumer it will send, what algorithm used in the background, but it will ensure that it will publish the message. It will send the message to one of the queue only, one of the consumer only. In case of topic, it will send the message to all the all the active consumer basically. That is the difference. So in my case, if I'm not using the clustering, if the message is coming to the topic, the message will go to both the server, and both the server will process the message. Even let's consider, just forget I am not using the clustering. In case of queue, what will happen? There are 2 consumer, prod server 1 and the prod server 2, but queue will ensure that the message goes to prod server 1 or either prod server 2. So in case of queue, we can go without clustering also. In case of HTTP listener, we can go without clustering also, right? But in case of topic listener or in case of file listener, we have to ensure that we go with the clustering. The clustering will ensure that only the message is processed by one of the node, not by both the node. So that's why we have used the clustering. Then we have to also enable the API enforcement policy basically. So what we do, we pair our this particular customer hosted Mule runtime application with the API manager using API auto discovery. We will use the API auto discovery. If you want to use API proxy, we can do that also. We can use the API proxy also, and then we can apply the policies basically. So this is my control plane and this is my data plane basically. So generally you can easily pair a control plane and data plane. So it's very simple, right? So, and there should be question why we are using clustering. What are the advantage and what are the features of clustering? It provide high availability, those kind of thing. It distribute the workloads basically. So basically my question will be like, even if it's providing the high availability and it distributing the workloads, then what is the need of HTTP load balancer, right? It doesn't. So basically clustering doesn't do the HTTP workloads, load balancing basically. That's why we have to use the external load balancer basically for doing the HTTP workloads load balance basically. Okay. Any question on this particular architecture? And for also I've used you also have to use data needs to be shared across the node. So for that, clustering is very suitable option. It can share the data across the multiple nodes. So basically, if you create the object store and that object store needs to be shared with a node too, so you can make use of the clustering. I have a caching, right? And that caching needs to be shared across the multiple servers. So you can use this particular option, clustering. Those kind of things can be done basically. Okay. Any question?
Not a question, but just to add to your explanation. So we have a production load balancer as well. So this load balancer can do a health check for both the cluster, server 1 and server 2. If any of the server is down, then the request can be to the other server.
Yeah. That is right. That is true. Yeah, that is true. That is the function. That is the by default capability of any load balancer, right? So
right.
So that's why we have to use the HTTP load balancer. Now, any question on that before I go to other use case?
No.
Yes.
I have one thing here. I mean, just not regarding solution. We didn't use a server group there because we have messaging concept, right? That is what our requirement is.
Yeah, it will come in next use case.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I will explain the difference between clustering and the server group basically. Okay. So yeah, it will come in next. Now I will go to next requirement. The requirement is almost same. Only difference is that here need to support integration like HTTP listener and JMS queue listener. No need of data sharing. Okay. So in that case, we can make use of the server group basically. We can make use of the server group basically. Only difference here, we are using the GMS queue listener and HTTP listener. Okay. So for, as I mentioned, for even if we are using the HTTP listener, we require the external load balancer. The clustering doesn't help there, right? For doing the HTTP workload load balancing basically, right? Even we need the external load balancer basically. Correct. So why we don't use the server group in that case? The second, I have only queue listener cases and no data sharing needed. So as I mentioned, queue itself have a property. Even the two consumers are listening to same queue, it will deliver the message to only one queue. So we can definitely go with the server group basically, right? The server group is nothing, it's a group of server, but they act in the isolated mode. They are isolated with each other. So server 1 doesn't know where server 2 exists, server 2 doesn't know where server 1 exists. In case of clustering, they both know each other basically. Okay. And they also do the data sharing using the Hazelcast memory grid basically. Okay. So here, that's why I go with the server group. As what happens, then you can ask me, I can even use the clustering. What is difference between clustering and server group? As per me, like clustering uses, in clustering, both servers keep on communicating with each other. It requires some extra memory there, right? It requires some extra memory there to communicate with each other. They both server keep sending the status to each other basically, right? In case of server group, both the server doesn't communicate with each other basically. They are isolated with each other. Just we are connecting both the servers using this external load balancer for HTTP listener. And for queue listener, like it doesn't matter. Like when you deploy the application to the prod server 1 and the prod server 2, they both are listening to same queue, but queue will ensure that the message goes to only one server, not to both the servers, right? That is the property of queue. And as I mentioned, for API applying the client ID enforcement policy, we can use API auto discovery and API proxy, whatever option we like, we can do that. So that is the one of the main difference between a server group and the clustering. Is this your question, Ashish, right?
I mean, that was not a question. I said like why we didn't use that. Like, if we add to use case 4, if we add one more point, one more condition, I want to use a topic, then this solution won't work.
Yeah,
okay.
This solution will not work because topic what? So if topic have a 2 listener, right, or 3 listener, so it will deliver a message to all the listener. This is the property of topic. Topic can do the multicasting basically.
Yes.
Okay, and also if you here we are not doing the data sharing also, like we are not using object store or we are not using any caching kind of thing, right? In that case we can go with the server group, right? Because if you want to do the data sharing or like if you want to use the VM persistent VM queue or those kind of thing, you have to use the clustering. So clustering can store all your shared data into this distributed Hazelcast distributed memory grid basically.
Yeah, and that server group solution will be faster than the cluster solution because
I will suggest like if you are having the HTTP workloads, right, or queue kind of workloads, right, you can definitely go with server group basically. Okay. Any doubt on these 4 use cases before I move to other use cases? So basically, Bill, like it's a very good question. So basically, if you have a topic listener, or like if you have a topic listener, if you want to do the data sharing, you have a file listener, if those kind of integration available, if you want to deploy your on-premise system, you have to go with a clustering. But if you have only like HTTP listener or queue listener kind of integration, okay, you have to go with server group. Even if you have a batch kind of integration where you have to use the caching or where you use the object store, you have to go with the clustering. Server group doesn't provide high availability. Basically, you have to use the external load balancer to ensure the high availability. Basically, this is happen in both. Clustering provide high availability, but for HTTP workloads, you have to use the basically external load balancer. Okay, so this now I will come to one of the more capability. So now runtime fabric. The client is looking to implement a cost-effective solution and can operate on the minimum cores basically. So basically, client want the solution even like they can assign 0.2 cores to their application and like depending like what kind of workload that application have and depending on that it can assign the minimum V cores also. The solution must be highly available, fault tolerant, and having moderate workloads. They want to migrate 400 plus integration on MuleSoft and able to assign minimum unit of core while deploying the application. Client is looking for container-based solution. An API must secure at a edge and application level by applying the policy like rate limiting client ID enforcement policy. Okay, so it's very simple. Like so, basically, the client can assign 0.02 cores to the application. Like they can also assign a small unit of the cores to the application because they have some application having the really high workload. Some application have a very small workload. Some application have a moderate workload. So depending on the workload, they can operate on the minimum cores basically. Like they can assign they can do the correct solutioning. They can assign the required cores to application, right? So and they have a 400 plus integration. So they want some container based solution basically, and they can apply. They want to secure the APIs at the edge. They want to secure the APIs at the secure the API by applying the policies and all those things. So what is the solution? We can use the runtime fabric manager basically. So basically we can make use of the runtime fabric manager. So basically you can set up your runtime fabric manager in the customer hosted environment or AWS cloud or GCP or Azure or and now MuleSoft also come up with some template for EKS and the AKS. Like you can also set up your this runtime fabric manager in EKS and EKS also. So basically, when you deploy the application on the runtime fabric, you can assign minimum of 0.02 V cores basically, 0.02 cores. So minimum cores can be assigned to your runtime fabric is 0.02 cores basically. Okay, and you can also assign a maximum cores can be utilized by that particular application. So minimum can be 0.02 cores. You can also assign a reserve CPU of 0.02 6. It means if you are, it will start with 0.02 cores, it can go up to 0.06 cores, like that. So those kind of things can be assigned to the Runtime Fabric Manager. Apart from that, each application in Runtime Fabric Manager work in the isolated mode. So basically they got deployed into the pod, basically into the pod. So pod is consist of your operating system. On the top of operating system you have a Mule runtime, on the top of Mule runtime you have application. In each pod you can have only one Mule runtime, one operating system, and one application. Each application deployed to Runtime Fabric worker, they are isolated with each other. Okay, so basically to enable the policy, to apply the policies to your application, you can definitely again use the API manager, and you can just use the API auto discovery or API proxy, and you will definitely require the external load balancer, to connect all the controllers. Basically they work in this master slave architecture. The request will come to controller, and controller do the routing, contain based routing to the worker depending on the request to the correct application. Okay, and you can use the external load balancer. So basically on the top of external load balancer you can apply the any point security. Basically what happens, so generally each controller have a ingress pod or ingress container, basically, which is on the top of ingress container you can apply this any point security. Basically there is a policies, there is a separate policies for any point runtime manager. You can apply at the edge, you can apply at a network level, like IP whitelisting, IP blacklisting, you can detect threat detections, tokenization, those kind of things are available in the any point security. So that is how you can secure the network, and using the API manager you can secure your application. Any doubt on this? So Sandeep, it's not like that hierarchy. So worker, so basically the request will always come to the controller. Controller use the content-based routing to route the request to the worker. So worker, so generally pod is kind of container, basically, kind of container. It's a container where your application get deployed. So basically each pod is having its operating system, its CentOS. On the top of operating, it set up the Mule runtime. On the top of Mule runtime, this is the application. Okay, so that is how the pod is. That is how the pod is structured, basically. So there can be n number of pod in one application. Yeah, Manjari, it's completely based on the Kubernetes and the Docker based architecture. Anu, you are right. The ACE can be used only with RTF. The anypoint security only can be used with RTF. Can there be any different possible? Can there be any communication possible between different application deployed in different worker? Yeah, it's possible. Like you can use the internal. There is an internal communication is available. So generally, when you create the runtime fabric instance, you can create an instance. Each runtime fabric instance is give a instance ID. So you can use or make use of that instance ID / your resource path. So that is how you can use the internal application communication. You don't have to go outside and come again inside. You can do the internal communication, inter application communication. That is possible. There's a URL, the runtime fabric instance ID / resources. You can make use of that to do the internal communication. Okay. So let me go to one more use case. So this is one of the great capability provided by MuleSoft. So basically, like how you can leverage the API management capability for non-MuleSoft application. So basically, a client wants to implement the API management capability for non-MuleSoft application, having n number of web services API implemented using non-Mule technology, but there is no API governance. Need to enable do-auth authentication for all the web services and the APIs. Want fewer client can access the APIs publicly and secure. So generally, like I have some set of web services and API developed in the Spring Boot. Okay, but there's no API governance on the top of that particular non-MuleSoft application. They are running in the on-premise data center, and now the customer want to expose those APIs publicly to ensure that those has been published securely, and like it can be accessed by the fewer client. So what will be the approach? So this is the approach basically. So basically what I can do, I have some set of on-premise web services and non-MuleSoft APIs, right, which is behind the firewall basically. So what I can do, the first thing I have to set up a VPC. I will set up a VPC because I want to first ensure the connectivity between any point platform and the on-premise. So I will set up the anypoint VPC. Then I use the VPN Ipsec Tunneling to set up a connectivity between anypoint VPN and the on-premise VPN. So once the connectivity is set up, so what I can do, I can create a proxy for I can create some certain set of proxy. Those proxy will communicate with those web services. And on the top of that proxy, I can enable the API manager, like API policy. I can enable API security, API analytics, API alerts, and the monitoring, right? So like a consumer will send the request to this particular, Mule proxy URL. Now that there's one more requirement I have forget to show in that diagram. Want your client to access those API publicly. So what I will do, I will create a dedicated load balancer in that particular VPC, So I will create a dedicated load balancer in particular VPC. I will ensure like whitelisted CRDR is configured with a fewer clients basically. I will remove that 0.0.0.0/0. I will just put the IP range from which traffic needs to be allowed. So that I will do. And generally the best solution like to come for enabling the API governance for non-MuleSoft application, you always create a proxy basically. You can create a API proxy using API manager. You can do that, okay? And so you can apply the policies and whatever policy like OAuth and whatever like client ID enforcement policy you need to apply. Any question on this? This is the like lot of customer come up with this particular requirement. So this is very important. Any question?
Jitendra, in that dedicated load balancer, is it possible to give 2 IP ranges? Because let's say I have 2 clients.
You can give it 10.
10,
you can give it 20 IP ranges. That is possible. You can give n number of IP ranges.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now I will come to last few slides. How many slides remaining? Let me check. Yeah. So now I think Rajiv, you asked me question like what will happen like if application goes down, single worker, multiple worker. So I will yeah. So this is the solution here. So basically, I'm talking about some disaster recovery option, So there are few options which MuleSoft automatically provides. Okay. So generally, as I mentioned, like when you deploy the application to Cloud Hub, you select the region basically. In my case, I select the region as a US East one. So by default, the application will get deployed to one of the availability zone. In this case, the application deployed to availability zone 2 basically. And like due to some network failure or rack failure, the availability zone 2 goes down. What will happen? So in that case, MuleSoft will automatically deploy or restart that application in other availability zone. In this case, the zone is zone 3. But while doing this process, it may require 10 to 15 minutes of downtime basically. So generally, it takes some 10 to 15 minutes of downtime, right? Because it's switching from one availability zone to other availability zone, it may require 10 to 15 minutes of downtime, right? So I will say if there are some few non-critical application, you can go with one worker basically, one worker. In case of critical application, even it cannot tolerate the downtime of 1 minute, this solution may not work because you can see availability zone never goes down, but you can experience sometime. It may happen like the availability zone can become slow, there can be rack failure, there can be power failure. In that case, the application will automatically deploy to availability zone 3. Okay. So application will be deployed to one availability zone out of 3 selected AWS region, which we have discussed. In case of AZ or failure, the MuleSoft will automatically restart the application in other AJ. It may experience some downtime. You can also status this property, status.mulesoft.com. In that case, it will generate the alerts to you that particular availability zone is gone down and we are redeploying the application to other availability zone. And distance between each availability zone is not exceed more than 350 miles basically. So between zone 1 and zone 2, it not be more than 350 miles basically. Zone 2 to zone 3, not 350 miles. Okay. So its availability zone is nothing. It's a data center within that particular region, basically a logical data center. Not 2 workers. In case of multiple workers, what will happen? So in case of multiple workers, when I select, I want to deploy the application on 2 workers. So the application will get deployed to 2 availability zone 2, and in case the application go deploy to zone 2 and zone 1, the zone 1 goes down, right? But still my application is available in zone 2. So and zone 1 goes down, so like MuleSoft will automatically try to deploy the application in zone 3, that particular application. But still one instance of my application is running. Here we will experience zero downtime, no downtime, because the even like switching from zone 1 to zone 3 will take time, but still I have a one instance available, and all the application will serve by this particular instance till the application from zone 1 to zone 3 is deployed or restarted. Once it's done, the application, the load traffic will load balance between zone 2 and zone 3 basically. So any question on this? It's same thing, like only difference between one worker and multiple worker doesn't experience any downtime basically, because we have a more than one worker. But in single worker we may experience some downtime in case of aged goes down.
Jitendra, one question. Can it go across region?
I'm coming on. It will not go
Okay.
across the region. First of all, it will not go across the region. Okay, it will go within the region only. In these two cases, it will go within the region.
Okay.
Now my question is that what will happen in case region got failed? My region itself got failed due to some natural calamities or some. It never happened in the AWS, but let's consider if it goes down. So in that case all my 3 availability zone 3 or zone goes down, and in that case my MuleSoft doesn't have an option to deploy the application in any availability zone, and your application has been crashed. Now you don't have any option to recover that till the region comes up. So what will be the option? Any solution for that? Hello, any solution for that?
So you have to go to the other region. That's the only solution.
Other region in the sense?
For example, you can go to WS South 1.
But still that south one is also gone down there.
Then go to Australia.
No, you have an option to use the multi-region solution. Okay, so basically you can ensure like multi-region. So basically you can have a two setups setup basically. So one setup in the US East one setup in the US East 2, maybe some other region. So what I have done, I have set up my environment in US East 1 as well as in US East 2 basically. So dedicated load balancer in both the region, and so either what you can do, either you can use active mode. In case of active mode, what you have to do, you require the external load balancer also. You require some external load balancer for prod and non-prod. Okay. But in case of active passive, you can directly make use of dedicated load balancers. What I've done, let me explain once again. So now, as I mentioned, my region goes down. So basically, how I can quickly turn around that, So my region goes down. How can I ensure the lesser RPO and the lesser RTO basically? Okay. So how can I do that? So basically, the option is that you can set up a multi-region solution. So basically, you can have a same set of environment in both the region, US East 1 and US 2. East 2, you can create a VPC, and you can create a VPNs connections between your on-premise application and both, VPCs in both the regions. Basically, you can do that. Then you can set up the load balancer for each environment, each VPC in each region basically. So there will be total 4 load balancer. If you want this to work in active mode, then you have to set up some external load balancer between this dedicated load balancer basically. You have to do that. Okay, so request will come to external load balancer. The external load balancer will send either region request to dedicated load balancer of US East 1 or dedicated load balancer of US East 2 basically. Right, depend. It will just route the traffic. Also, the advantage here we are getting, in case of US East 1 goes down, this load balancer will come to know US East 1 is not responding. All the requests will go to the US East 2 basically. In that case, you will be having like very less RTO and less RPO basically. Okay. So apart from that, let's consider I want to work in active passive mode basically. US East must be active and US East 2 must be passive. In that case, I don't require external load balancer. You can directly send the request to dedicated load balancer. In case of US East 1 goes down, you have to do some IP changes in your domain basically in the public DNS registry to map this particular US East 2 region basically. Correct. So, but here we may require some kind of downtime to do the changes and all those things. This is the manual intervention, right? So there are two options. Either you can use active-active mode or you can use active-passive mode, basically. Okay, any question on this? Does this recovery active?
Yeah, one question, Vijay. So this is about the flows, right? But how about the database? Because database should be either one, or if it is, there are two database in two different regions, then are they going to be mirrored, or how that
So,
could
so
work?
here, I don't think in this solution we require any database. Runtime manager doesn't have any database, right? So here we are not maintaining the SLA for databases, right? That is the something else. Like we have some backend services, so we will use some VPN direct connect, VPN Ipsec tunneling to connect the databases and all those things. And we should not worried about any SLAs for databases. That has to be taken care separately. About like how we can enable the multi-region cloud up solution, right? How we can deploy the application in multi-regions, basically. That is what. So database, like we are not maintaining any databases on cloud up, basically, right? So that is the separate topic altogether. Like that has to be taken care by other team, like how we can, like how the data, like database can be mirrored, or how we can enable the disaster recovery for database. That cannot be done from the MuleSoft side, right, Rajiv?
Okay, so we are just taking care of the mule runtime, not the
So why
storage.
why we will worry about, we are from the integration team, right? Why we will worry about the databases? That needs to be taken care at a separate level, right? Definitely there will be DR system for the databases and all those things, right? We have to ensure that like we are able to connect to all the instance of database from here, basically using direct connect or VPN Ipsec Tunneling. That is only we have to take care, right? We don't have to worry about other thing, basically, right? That is the different RPO and different RTO, right? We don't have to worry about those parameters. We have to worry about our integration service are up and running.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Any question before I move into quiz? Yeah, Dipesh, I explained that just now, right? No, remote MuleSoft doesn't support that remote VPC peering options. Basically, we don't have to do. We can connect directly dedicated load balancers, right? As I mentioned, we don't have to worried about remote VPC peering. And why we want to do the regions VPC peering within the regions? We don't have to do that, right? We can use connect using dedicated load balancer and this external load balancer. Can you explain me what is the disadvantage of multi-region? What is the limitations? Cost, because you require everything double, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
basically you want two VPC, you want three VPC, you want three VPC here, you want two dedicated load balancer, you want two dedicated load balancer other region, you want the external load balancer also, right? But at the same time it provides the 100% high availability solution, right? It is not possible like two solution goes down at two region goes down at the same time. I have never seen that one region also goes down. It never happened. Okay. What is the advantage of this multiple worker here? Like you don't have to like worry. It also give almost like 100% of high availability, right? Like in case something goes wrong with region, then there is a problem. Otherwise it also provide 100%. What is the advantage here? Here we can use the minimum cores. Basically we have to deploy the solution into the one core, but it doesn't provide the guarantee 100% of the high availability, right? We may experience some kind of downtime here. This is all about cloud of any point platform. Any question before I move to quiz? See, Suman, like definitely, like no object. See, like this is the good question, Suman. Like you don't have to worry about this object store, because like let me come. So object store for this particular environment, this particular like region will maintain in this particular region. Object store for this region will maintain in this region. Once the request get inside this US East 1 region, the whole request will fulfill by US East 1 only. It will not move to the US 2. When the request will come to US East 2, the whole request will be fulfilled by the US 2. It will not go to US East 1. So they can use US East 2 when the request come into US 2 East 2, it will use its object store. When the request coming to the US East 1, it will use their object store. But if you want to share the object store across the region, you can make use of the APIs, basically REST APIs. Basically, you can use the make use of the REST APIs. So that is what you can do. to access that object store in the other regions. Yes, Hari Prasad, you are right. You just have to mapping. You have to just change the IP addresses in the mapping. So in Cloud Hub, you can deploy only one application on 0.1 vCore. Only one application on Cloud Hub. Okay. Ashish, I will need your help. I will go with some questions.
Yeah, definitely. I was about to ask you. You're answering questions. That's the reason I didn't ask.
Yeah. I think I cover all the questions. If I miss anything, just let me know. Okay.
No.
Guys, just before I start with quiz, so I just one important message to everyone. So just after the end of this session, you will receive a feedback form. Please give the feedback. Okay. So also, as I mentioned last time, anybody who want to be speaker, please come forward and let us know. Let us know the topic. We will help them to prepare that topic. Please come forward and you can reach me, Nitish, or me. For the upcoming sessions, basically, if you want. So also, just please give the feedback for the session. So let me start with quiz first. Okay. So I am just going with question first. What is the best way to connect AWS VPC and endpoint VPC if they exist in the same region? A, VPC peering, B, VPN Ipsec tunneling, direct connect, none of the above. What is the answer? Answer is, I think it's a VPC peering. Option is A. I think Deepesh is correct. Harshad Bansude is correct, and Anil Betapuri.
I'm waiting for you. Yeah.
You can take these three names: Deepesh, Harshad.
Just a second. Yeah, Deepesh.
Deepesh Dubey, Harshad Bansude.
Harshad Bansude.
Then Anil Betapuri.
Anil Betapuri. I'll give you at the end, okay? I'll just.
I'm going with the second question. Can we implement clustering the Cloud Hub? True or false? Okay. Answer is B. We cannot implement a clustering in Cloud Hub.
Yeah.
So it's David, Tarun Rathod, David Tore, Tarun Rathod, and Harshad is already there. And Pratik Gare.
David Tore, Tarun Rathod.
And Pratik Gare. Pratik Gare. Pratik Gare. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me put the line. How to enable the API management capability for non-MuleSoft application? API auto discovery, API proxy, API analytics, or API security?
The answer is B.
Answer is B, API proxy, right?
Yeah. So, tell me the name.
Tarun already is there.
Okay.
So David is already there. You can put Hiralal Shah. Hiralal Shah.
Hiralal. Okay.
Tarun Kumar.
Tarun Kumar. This is Tarun Kumar. Okay.
And Suman Chatterjee.
Suman Chatterjee.
Yeah, Chatterjee.
I'll ping you all these 9 names.
Where you ping me? WhatsApp.
No, direct here only. I'll ping you direct.
Okay, let me check. Where you ping me? Can you ping me in the chat box? You have DM me, right?
Yeah. You're not able to see?
No.
Okay, I'll ping in chat box itself. No worry. I'll ping you direct. I don't know why it is not showing there. Okay, anyway.
Ashish, I'm making a host. If you can enable the mic for everyone, it will be good.
So there's the list. Just I pinged you. See at the end.
Yes, I'm just making a host. No, if you can enable
Okay.
the mic for everyone, no, it will be useful.
Yeah, sure. Sure. Yeah. Why it is not coming? I mean, Tarun. Yeah. After Tarun. Yeah, Tarun. Tarun Rathod, Pratik Gare.
So I'm going with first winner. It's a Tarun Rathod. So you can ping me your email ID.
Tarun, congrats.
It's Harshad Banchode. Congress Harshad.
Congrats, Harshal. Guys, you can ping your email IDs in the chat box. I got Tarun's one. Tarun Rathod's email ID.
Tarun Hiralal Sav, the third winner. Yeah, congratulations to all the three winners.
I got the Harshad one. Thank you, Harshad. Congratulations again. And the last one is Tarun Kumar.